we are complicated beings. We can, in many respects, in many areas of our lives, be consistent and faithful and obedient and walk rightly with God. But all of us have a pressure point. All of us have a weakness, have some area of our lives where we are prone to repeatedly stumble. Such was the case with Abraham. When we were introduced to Abraham in Genesis 12, we saw his faith on display as he left his home, as he followed the call of God. But we also saw his faithlessness regarding his wife when they sojourned to Egypt. Now, after 25 years, Abraham finds himself in a similar situation, and he actually responds in the same foolish manner. This time, Abraham and his wife Sarah are in Gerar. Abraham presents Sarah as his sister, and the king of that city, a man named Abimelech, takes Sarah as his own. Now, like the previous occasion, God intervenes and rescues both Sarah and the lusting king from further wickedness. So, a few thoughts and then a point of application for us. First, notice how God uses the pagan king Abimelech to expose the sin of Abraham. It's humbling when godless individuals act more righteously than those who should know better. Abimelech called the whole situation a great sin. He stated that these sorts of things should not be done, and he's actually incredulous towards Abraham and Sarah for their lie. Notice also Abraham's weak attempts to justify his own actions, the immoral nature of the local people, his fear of death, and the half-truth about Sarah being his sister. He acted as if his cunning and his deceit was more effective, or was a more effective safety net than the truth and the promises of God's word. Third, God used Abimelech, certainly, but he also punished him. Like the plagues that God sent against the Egyptians 25 years prior, God cursed the king and his household for their sin. Remember that sin is sin, and while God may use wickedness to accomplish his purposes, he will eventually judge it. Lastly, see God's grace on display here. Abraham acted sinfully, faithlessly, and was, quite honestly, just a pathetic excuse for a husband. But God still used him. God still called him a prophet. And as we'll see next chapter, God still blesses him. All this to say that God's mercy is more. And so let me end then with where I began, and that's with a sort of challenge. See, it's always easier to see the pattern of sin in other people. But let's encourage you and me to reflect upon ourselves for a moment. Is there an area of my life where I habitually fail? Can I look back and see a pattern of weakness in a particular area or situation? If so, let's take some time and go to God in confession and prayer, seeking his mercy and receiving his forgiveness. God works in spite of us. God ultimately uses all circumstances for our good and for his glory.